Continuing our series, Management Consulting. In the first session, Management Consulting 01, we discussed meaning and scope of management consulting. In session 2, Management Consulting 02, we discussed the process of management consulting, which is the heart of the series. Today, session 3, Management Consulting 03, we will discuss 5 points, of which, in my view, the most important is ethics. Ethics in management consulting. Today we'll go into ethics, client relationship, cost and fees, knowledge management, and scaling up of any management consulting business. Of all the 5 points, in my view, ethics in management consulting is the most important. Let's go into it. We start with the first point of ethics. Ethics in management consulting. There is something called legality and something called ethics. Ethics is a wider term than legality. There are areas where something can be completely legal but unethical. In the domain of ethics, which pertains to our moral sense, our ideas about something being right or wrong, everyone in society has ideas about what is right and what is wrong in every context. However, there need not be a consensus in society on these ideas. When on certain ideas, a large group in society develops a consensus, it need not be 100% consensus. It need not be 100% consensus. It need not even be 51% consensus. But if a large group, 30-40% of society, develops a consensus on something in the ethical domain, and there is no comparable group on the opposite side, that ethical component then is enabled to be converted into a law. So law is essentially a consensus in the domain of ethics that the society has, which can then be converted into something legal. So ethics is a much larger domain than legality. So when we talk of ethics in management consulting, we are talking about something more than pure legality. How do management consultants and management consulting firms practice ethics in management consulting? What codes, conventions, and laws do they follow? And in practice, what are the points one has to bear in mind in the context of ethics in management consulting? Let us go into these areas. Management consultants across the world and management consulting firms both first ethical convention they have to fall back upon is the ethical code of ICMCI, International College of Management Consulting Institutes. This global body, which is a federal body, a global federal body of management consulting institutes of all nations, the major nations in the world. ICMCI has its ethical code of conduct. Because ICMCI is the global professional body in management consulting, it has developed an ethical code. You can see it on the website. And this is the first canon, convention, codified do's and don'ts that management consultants and consulting firms fall back upon. Second entity in the area of ethics is the law of the land. So apart from the ethical code of conduct of ICMCI, law of the land wherever you practice has to be followed. And these two comprise the conceptual foundation of practice of ethics in management consulting. You follow the law of the land, you follow the ethical code of ICMCI. In some countries, consultants also take professional liability insurance in case unknowingly they make a mistake pertaining to ethics or integrity and the consequences befall involving heavy penalty or fine. If we go into details of the ethical code of ICMCI, it has many elements, but in concise, if we have to go into it, one way to do it is to look at the constituents of ethics in management consulting as being founded upon 8 pillars. The edifice of ethics in management consulting can be conceptualized in one way as an edifice that stands on 8 pillars. And these pillars have been listed out on the screen. The first pillar is competence. It says, the first principle of ethics says, don't take up assignments in areas where you don't have competence. Don't window dress your resume to show false competencies. Don't exaggerate your competence. So your competence has to be fairly, truthfully, transparently, and without any trick communicated to the client and to the world at large. So to the client, to your own company if you are working in a consulting firm, and to the world at large where need be, you communicate your competence truthfully, fairly, without any mischief. So exaggeration or misrepresentation of competence involves the first ethical principle. The principle says you will take assignments only in areas where you have competence, and you will always explicitly, transparently communicate your competence without any exaggeration or misrepresentation or false claim. So that's the first principle of practicing ethics in management consulting, the principle of competence. The second principle is of objectivity. When you are doing any assignment, you will proceed objectively to whatever result your study leads you to. You will not drive the assignment to a predestined destination. You won't get into a situation where it is said the outcome of research depends upon who commissions the research. You won't get into such kind of research. So you will do management consulting based upon objectivity and not based upon your subjectivity. Second principle of management consulting, that it is an evidence-based, largely empirical, time-tested, convention-based discipline. And objectivity is the cornerstone of management consulting. So you will try to minimize subjectivity, faith, guesswork, and try to be as true, loyal to objectivity as possible. So the second principle of ethics is objectivity. Objectivity in doing the assignment, objectivity in allowing the result to come up, whatever it is comes up naturally, and objectivity in communication with the client. Third principle of ethics is the principle of truthfulness. You will be truthful to your firm if you are a part of a consulting firm, and truthful to the client. Concealing facts, concealing material evidence, concealing information that can be to competitive detriment of your client, that has to be avoided. So truthfulness about the possible outcomes, truthfulness about the method used, truthfulness about the results derived in the study, and truthfulness about the outcomes expected out of the assignment. Truthfulness at times about the competence of the company itself and the competence of people managing the company. Very difficult, but that is the criteria of truthfulness. Fourth criteria, the criteria of confidentiality. Confidentiality has to be maintained in areas of financial information, intellectual property, strategies of the company, personal weaknesses of the promoters or top management, calendar of phased rollout of brands or across territories, private processes in manufacturing, weaknesses of the company. Confidentiality has to be maintained not only during the assignment, but more importantly, after the assignment is over. You will always get tempting feelers from competitors who want to buy information. Often this will be accompanied with a proposal of a new assignment. So under all temptations, the confidentiality has to be maintained. Fifth principle, conflict of interest. You will not take up consulting assignments when there is a conflict of interest. For example, if a consulting firm is working for a group, the same consulting firm, let us say, if the consulting firm is working for the group in the area of marketing or strategy, the same consulting company will not take up accounting and auditing of the same client. There should not be any conflict of interest. Or if a consulting firm has done consulting work for a non-profit, then the same consulting firm will not take up impact assessment for the same NGO, because there is otherwise a conflict of interest. You are evaluating your own performance. Conflict of interest can also happen in a different way. For example, if you are into evaluation of brands, brand equity evaluation, and you are asked to do a training program, how to do equity evaluation, brand equity evaluation by a company, there is a conflict of interest. I mean, you can't give away your intellectual property to a company from whom you are expecting an assignment in future. So this also is an instance of conflict of interest. So all conflict of interest have to be avoided. Conflict of interest can also involve taking up assignment from a company where any relative or family member is in top management or on the board. It is like son of a judge who is a lawyer arguing before his father who is a judge. So conflict of interest has to be avoided. Sixth criteria, very important pillar, commission. This has forever been a contentious topic in the area of management consulting. And I think of all the 8 criteria, this is one of the most difficult to get any consensus on in the management consulting community. This commission refers to commission a management consultant can take if he refers an assignment or gives reference of a consultant to a client. Say, for example, say I have a friend of mine who is an HR consultant and I am a marketing consultant. My friend is working for a company in the area of HR. The company develops a need for a marketing consultant and my friend gives my reference. And he talks to me and he says, I can give you a reference, you might land up an assignment and you might get an assignment. But if you get an assignment, then you will pay 5% of that assignment as commission to me. Now what happens? There are 2 opinions on this. One opinion is this is out and out bribery. It has to be completely banned. Second view upon it is more pragmatic. It says giving a reference is not just giving a phone number. You take responsibility and you put your reputation on the line when you give a reference. Because if the referred person or referred company doesn't perform, the client or the person comes back to you saying it is because of you I am suffering this. So your reputation is at stake. So giving a reference is an extremely professional activity and a high responsibility activity and a high risk activity to one's own reputation. Giving a reference also saves the beneficiary from the marketing cost that he would have otherwise had to incur if this assignment had not landed in his lap. Giving a reference often also gives competitive advantage to the one who is being referred, and he reduces the risk of not getting assignment in competition. So because of all these factors, it is just that the beneficiary consultant or consulting firm should share a small percentage of profit with the person who gives the reference. So commission is just fair and completely ethical. These are two opinions about commissions. Very difficult to develop a consensus in the community. The working consensus is this. The working consensus is commission can be taken, but it has to be transparently taken in full knowledge of the client and the beneficiary consultant and the person who gives the reference. All three of them should have full disclosure and full knowledge of this commission being paid. The client has to be aware that the person who is giving a reference is going to take a commission from the beneficiary, the referred consultant or consulting firm. So this is a very important element of ethical discourse in the context of management consulting. Caveat is one should not reduce oneself to a situation where one does not do consulting work by oneself, rather lives by commission. That's an extreme situation that has to be avoided. That's a caveat. Ideally, commission should constitute less than 5% of a consultant's income. Seventh pillar of ethics in our discussion, value for money. The consultant must give value for money to the client. The client, neither during the assignment nor after it, should ever feel that he has not got value for the money he spent. So one has to be true and fair and sincere in providing value to the client. At times, the client doesn't even know what is the just value because he's not from a technical area. And in that situation, it becomes even more imperative for the consultant to make sure that adequate value is delivered. Occasionally, the consultant gives adequate value, but the client is not able to extract it. Especially in study reports, you give a report from which so much value can be extracted, but the client is able to extract only half of the value. And there it is a good practice, a customer delight practice, that you help the client extract full value. Because even at half value, the client is more than happy because return on investment is very high. But it could be higher if the entire value is extracted, and one may have to help the client in extracting full value from one's report. Eighth, social impact. It is necessary that consultants and consulting firms include social sustainability and social impact in their decisions, in their work. Not to take up assignments which promote environmental degradation, not to take up assignments involving companies that involve child labor, not to take up assignments which can reduce public health, and this includes marketing chocolates and ice creams to students, very young children, marketing unhealthy products to people at large in society. The ethical canon says we should not take up any assignment which has a negative social impact, be it in the area of environment, health, child labor, social customs, and so on. So these are the 8 pillars of the edifice of ethics in management consulting, largely based upon the book Management Consulting by Milan Cooper. And that also is related to the ethical code of ICMCI. I would suggest everyone to go to the ICMCI website and read the ethical code and also read the chapter of ethics in Milan Cooper. Some more experiential points, rather I should say points from experience in the area of ethics in management consulting. First, giving right information for taking order. Not promising something very positive even if one knows it is not going to happen. Not to take the orientation that I will complete my assignment, take my money and run away, and leave the entrepreneur to his fate. Second point is don't take assignments you cannot do. For example, if somebody comes to you and says, I had a situation of this type. Somebody came to me and said, I want a survey to be done. The survey relates to the purchase of building materials. And I want a questionnaire to be filled by builders, fairly large size builders, on how they purchase the building material. I took some time, tried to find out if it was doable, and I came to realize that builders just won't give time, and even if they give time, they are not going to give this private information. And a few builders can be made to respond to the questionnaire through personal contacts, but it cannot be a large sample. So I had to decline that assignment. One example of where we don't take assignments we cannot do. Deliver results in time, right quality and quantity. Easy to understand. Handing over material ideas as contracted. Self-explanatory. Maintaining confidentiality, playing by the laws, playing by ethics. Respecting the no compete agreement if we have done it. Respecting the cooling off period if we have done it. And respecting the intellectual property part of the contract. Some more points of caution in the area of ethics. Another important element is the consultant and client relationship. The consultant-client relationships involves ethics very deeply, but in a slightly different way. It may involve, it not only may, it does, it involves ethics, not only pertaining to society, but at times pertaining to the rights of the consultant himself. So let's take up a few points. The consultant has to keep an optimum distance and should not become like an employee of the client. If you become an employee, if you start spending too much time on a regular basis and you don't do any other assignment over a long period of time, you lose the neutrality, the freshness, the originality, and you start thinking exactly like an employee. So one has to maintain optimum distance from the client. Involved enough to think something relevant in the context and distant enough to be fresh and original. Without optimum distance in the long term, we cannot do justice to value for money ethical canon of ethics. Second important element is client versus the stakeholders. Once I was called by a client, a textile client, and I was taken through the whole company, and we went to the shop floor, discussed with the workers, and I got to know stories of how the client wants us to give a report so the client can use it to go in for downsizing and maybe eventual closure down the line, to use the land of the textile mill for real estate purposes. And we got these stories from the labor. We back checked it in the marketplace. We back checked it in historical terms, found it to be true, and did not associate further for the assignment. So ethics comes in. Are you going to be with the client and help the client sort of get rid of or destroy the labor force? It's an ethical point that we should not allow ourselves to be used up by the client against any other constituent of the company or any stakeholder in the company. It can even be a vendor, but we should not become a weaponized consultant to be used by the client for unfair motives. There can be a situation of the client who is the CEO or the board going against the company. It's a very strange situation. The CEO of the company goes against the company, or the board of the company goes against the company. Often it happens. Rarely, I should not say often, rarely it happens, but it does happen. And unfortunately, it's happening with increasing frequency than before. We see the example of ILFS. I have seen many examples of professional CEOs who take bribes and act against the interest of the company, but in their own interest. So when the CEO sees his personal interest above the interest of the company, or the board sees their interest above the interest of the company, then we are in a difficult situation. Where should the consultant's loyalty be? To that abstract legal person called the company, or to live people who are hiring you? It's a difficult decision to make. In all probability, if you play ethical, you don't get the contract, you don't get the assignment. That is where the ethics comes, that the practice of ethics demands that you pay the price for it. So in such situation, ethics commands that we should be with the company rather than with unfairly behaving top management or even at times the board. We can have a situation where a company acts in a way against the government, either on the front of environment or on the front of taxation, and the company wants us to be with the company and fight the government or fool the government or cheat the government. Ethical canon again demands that we play fair and not participate in that game. One more delicate ethical situation comes up where you have a client who wants to break the law. Take the example of Satyam. And the client is ready to pay whatever you ask for, but the client wants you to be on the side of the client and be a partner in crime in breaking the law or helping the client to break the law at the least. Ethical canons are very clear to go by the law and not by the client who wants to break the law. One more ethical situation, client demands are unfair and excessive. The client contracts you for work X and then asks you to do X plus Y and says Y was included in X. Very common in India. This is a situation where the ethics of the client are in question against you, and we have to be strong and firm in protecting our legitimate interests and enforce ethics in the situation in our own interest. Client deliverables are X and we deliver Y. And the client is not able to make out because a substantial part of X is being delivered, but one component of Y is getting delivered instead of X. Say, for example, take a specific example. Client wants you to do a new product development study and give him a framework to actually develop the product in tangible terms as a prototype. You deliver the framework and you talk about the features and the price. You don't talk about usability, but you talk about promotion and you talk about brand management, which was never asked by the client. So what you are doing here is there is a shift of focus on deliverables. Client wanted something, part of it you deliver, another part you don't deliver, but the client doesn't even know that it will be necessary in future when he actually starts developing the product. But you develop something, you deliver something else. So this is where the focus has to be kept on the client deliverables. And the consultant should not try to barter what was promised with something else. One more ethical point. One has to expect and practice fair relationship principle, right work and right pay. So this is something the consultant expects from the client and people who work for the consultant expect from the consultant. So both ways, fair relationship related to right work and right pay have to be put in place, has to be exercised, and this fairness of right work, right pay relationship both ways has to be instituted both ways. So these are some more points on the path of ethics in management consulting. We now come to the next point, second point of discussion today, the cost and the fees. Cost is the cost of assignment. Assignment may be a turnkey assignment or it may be a retainership assignment. If it's a retainership assignment, then the client directly pays to some vendors. If it is a turnkey assignment, then you just submit the bill and the client pays you the full cost. So cost is very easy. Fees is the consulting fees that you put, and this is where the difficult question comes up. What is the range of consulting fees and how do you calculate your consulting fees? Individual consultants in India usually operate in the range of 2,500 to 25,000 per day. That is the range of individual consultants. Consulting firms in India usually operate in 50,000 rupees per man day to 1,50,000 rupees per man day. That is the range in the normal operation. Of course, there would be instances where somebody is charging less, somebody more, but this is an average range. In USA, it is different. Very large consulting firms, top of the end, they can go from $250 per hour per man hour to $500 per man hour. In very specialized situations, even more. How do you calculate what is the fee? There are many ways of calculating it. One model is the consultant or the consulting firm puts up a consolidated fee which includes all costs he has to incur. It's a turnkey fee. Second model is fee plus cost. So there is a fixed fee and costs are as incidental. One more model is of fixed fee or variable fee. Fixed fee means the consultant's fees are fixed regardless of the outcome of the project. In variable fee, part of the consultant's fee is fixed and part of it is a variable depending on the outcome of the assignment. There can be a third element also, one more way. Retainership fee. Retainership fee refers to a model where the consultant or the consulting firm is offered a fixed amount every month by the client, regardless of whether the client has adequate work to be given or otherwise. This fee is fixed and all incidental expenses are separately provided for by the client. And for this retainership fee, the consultant or the consulting firm reserves a fixed amount of time and experts for the company. Say 1 day per week or 2 days per week, something of that sort is reserved for the company, regardless of whether the company gives them work or doesn't give them work. The company retains the expertise on a monthly basis for long-term basis. So there can be a retainership fee. In advertisement, many advertising companies are now working on this model, that they charge the company a fixed amount every month and the entire media budget is spent directly by the company on media buying. In India, if you look at the whole range, it moves from 2,500 to 2,50,000 per day. But the most common is 2,500 to 25,000 per day. Now, why there is so much of variation is something important to understand. Consultancy services are of different types. Some services involve just providing a service, like helping somebody get ISO 9000 or doing a survey report for somebody. That is a pure service kind of, an ordinary service kind of service. In those cases, the consulting fees on a per man day basis or a per man hour basis is on the lesser side. Usually it goes from 5,000 per day to 10,000 per day. That's the most common range in India. Another group of consultancy services involves training somebody. And that training is going to give benefit to that person for a long time to come. It can involve training somebody on a new machine, or training somebody how to do a survey, or training somebody in the area of aesthetics. So this is a kind of developing a skill or giving private knowledge to somebody. And therefore, in this kind of services, the service is not usually charged on a per man hour or man day basis. It is charged based upon what is the benefit occurring to the client over the next 5 years or 10 years, and out of that a percentage is charged. So it is a percentage of long-term benefit, not per man hour or per man day. Second group of management consulting services. Third group of management consulting services are of the type that you are giving intellectual property to somebody. Like if a company wants you to teach its brand management team how to do brand evaluation. Now that is a transfer of intellectual property. And not only the company and the individuals are going to benefit from it for 10 years, they may even start doing it for others who knows. So in such situations, either you decline the assignment or you charge it very highly. So there, you don't only charge for the long-term benefit, you also charge for potential business the client may do or the people involved may do. They may leave this company and start something else, who knows. So there, the costs are very high. So you will charge there something like 1 lakh rupees per man day or 1.5 lakh rupees per man day. Or you may even go to 5 lakh rupees per man day. Because you're talking of something that can potentially become an entrepreneurial venture. Last group of management consulting services are those which are related to immediate benefit in terms of money. Say for example, advice given to hedge funds or internet or investment bankers or mutual funds to invest millions of dollars in the stock market. And if they do X, they earn 2 billion. If they do Y, they earn 5 billion. And the difference of 3 billion is a difference of judgment. And you can give advice to influence the judgment towards the right direction. And if because of your judgment, the earning shifts from 2 billion to 5 billion, you take a share of the differential of 3 billion. And therefore, the fee on a per day basis or a per hour basis seems astronomical, but it is not illegitimate. It is fair. It is not unfair because you are charging a small component of the total benefit the client is drawing out of your advice. So that is one more way of charging your fees in the area of management consulting. So we see the management consulting is a very wide area and very different types of services are services constitute this wide area. And based upon what is the nature of your management consulting service, and what is the benefit it's going to give to the client. On that basis, you put up a management consulting fee. Fourth point, knowledge management in management consulting. We discussed before that knowledge, insight, and experience is the core product that is sold in management consulting sector. Heritage of a consulting firm captured in its knowledge management database and captured in its consultants is a core strength of any management consulting firm. Management consulting firm always has to be a leader in the area of knowledge and thought. And so it has to keep doing intellectual exercises in the area. It also has to maintain a very strong knowledge management system. And what does the knowledge management system has to contain? It has to contain a sector-wise, project-wise database, whatever sectors you are interested in. Sector-wise, all the projects you have done or somebody else has done and available in public domain. Second, inventory of data related to the sectors you are interested in. Inventory of tools, which can be questionnaires, focus group discussion guides, forensic tools, whatever area you are consulting for. Inventory of experience and insight, which has to be captured by video recording interviews of team leaders and team members after a project is over. Videos of PPTs and post-project PPTs of the project teams. Cross-country learning interactions, where a team from McKinsey USA comes to McKinsey India and discusses their projects, what they did and what were their learning experience, and experience goes from India also to the US. You record the whole discussion and then put it on the web for all offices of McKinsey to access. Sector reports. Whatever sectors you are interested in or you wish to be interested in future, you develop sector reports. That's the first line of intellectual activity to get into the sector or to be always well informed about the sector. Every consulting firm worth the salt has to create very good sector reports in sectors of their interest. Database of experts inside and outside. It's very difficult to have all experts on the payroll in all areas. So you have some experts in some areas on your payroll, but a large inventory of experts outside of the company in a variety of areas and a database of them. Very important searchable database of statistics of secondary data and primary data. And continuing research at the frontier edge. We can see outcomes of McKinsey Institute, their publications. Similarly, all leading consulting firms commission research, develop insights, keep them in the proprietary knowledge management system. Part of it is published to develop a good brand and impress the clients. Part of it is used in a proprietary way while bidding with the client. Fifth and last point for today's discussion is scaling up. This is a challenge both individual consultants and consulting firms face. They start, grow to an extent, and then they plateau. They don't go below they don't go above the glass ceiling. The plateau effect is very strong in management consulting, and the effect is stronger in individuals more than the firm. But even in firms, you see the plateau effect. You see very soon both individuals and firms getting into the maturity stage and the plateau effect coming in. Tragedy is individuals remain individuals. They don't, most management consultants are not able to convert or graduate or grow from an individual to a consulting firm. And most individual consultants remain as individual consultants and retire as one. Just as similarly, small and medium management consultancy firms, they continue to remain small and medium management consultancy firms. Most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them. They may advise small and medium industry how to scale up, but they are not able to advise themselves correctly. Large consulting firms, after a few years of growth in any market after entry, they also see entering maturity very soon, experiencing the plateau effect very soon. In a developing economy, it's easy to grow. It may not be so in developed markets, but in a developing economy, it's easy to grow. Despite that, we see many large consulting firms not growing as fast as we believe they can. One area where in India the growth is very rapid, rather I should say was very rapid, that also has started plateauing, is a management consulting firm working along with a private equity investor and helping the private equity investors, client companies where the PE fund has invested, helping those investing companies perform better. So a management consulting firms, a large firm ties up with a private equity investor and starts working on those companies where the PE fund has invested. And that is ideal, it's quick, but it's not easy anymore. Now it's getting difficult. It was very easy and ideal for many years, but now after 10-15 years of that model, it has become difficult. The plateau effect has come there also. In the same model of working for a private equity firm or working in venture capital, private equity, or startup environment, often mentoring hidden stakeholders like vendors, it also brings quite some benefit to the client and often creates new clients. If that hidden stakeholder who often is a supplier has potential for his own development into a unicorn. And often cartels work in the sense, not in the negative sense of the word cartel, but in the sense a large consulting firm, I should not use the word cartel, let me say It's a wrong word. A large consulting firm getting in association with small local consulting firms, both in the for-profit and non-profit area. Those collaborative alliances often work and help uh, large consulting firms to do certain projects which otherwise they would not take up. And that is a kind of a small advance on the scale up challenge. It's somehow a localized, circumscribed, but a good way to beat the plateau effect in some way. Limited way, but still effectively so. So these are some of the points we can keep in mind while we talk of scaling up, and it's a difficult thing. The plateau effect comes very soon for a variety of reasons. It is subject by itself why the plateau effect takes place in consulting so pervasively. Not our subject today, but in a concise way to overview the scaling up challenge, the plateau effect. These are some of the points we can get into. Thank you. So today we have completed the third part of the series. Fourth part, Management Consulting 04. We will take up some case studies of management consulting firms, and some interesting case studies, very challenging for consultants. So with this, we end today's lecture.